Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to this beautiful Monday, January 13th, 2025. I just want to kind of top in with everyone and check in, see how we're doing. Today, what I wanted us to talk about is vulnerability. Yeah. What does it mean to be vulnerable? I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. I guess my best example would be, when you're going through a tough time, and feeling comfortable to kind of express yourself as you're going through that tough time and being in a space where somebody can actually receive that. And I wanted to share that because I know a lot of individuals I speak to, as men, we work through that vulnerability. And I wanted to kind of show a clip a little bit later. But before I go there, how do we feel comfortable with expressing ourselves as far as being vulnerable? Me personally, I know growing up in a household with mom being a very strong woman, that was a little tough. When you're a little boy, you look up to mom and your dad as well, they have high expectations. And so I know for me, kind of growing up, it was a challenge just to express myself because a lot of times something would happen and I would be a little fearful. And based on that fear, making sure you did it right or it went this way or that way. As you mature, it becomes a little bit challenging to express yourself as far as your vulnerability. And so as we grow, then we end up basically putting on a mask and going through the world with a mask, but that's not really who we are, right? And it's really interesting because I talk to a lot of my clients and we have conversations about, I want to date and this type of thing. And that's cool, right? But, it's important to make sure you have someone in your life and they match that energy. So let me explain that. So let's say that, you're a person who you're okay with your insecurities, you're working through them and you express yourself. The person that you're with, they have to be pretty strong within themselves too, to honor you. That's been a challenge. A lot of my clients, we talk about that. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. I know for me, everybody has things they're working through. And that can be a challenge because a lot of times we judge ourselves. It's like we have these airs, right? We have these airs. And so how do we get through these airs and express ourselves and feel comfortable with expressing ourselves, right? Recently I have a couple friends, we send memes and different videos to each other. And it's like passing gas and this type of thing. And it's like, as a family member, you can have that particular experience to a close friend maybe, but to people that you kind of meet, even though we all do it, right? We all pass gas. It all depends on people's vulnerability level. And so I wanted to kind of express this story I had. So I was with an individual a while back. And we were actually watching the TV, just watching the show, just chilling, like a Netflix and chill type moment. And, just me and this young lady, we were sitting there chilling. And, all of a sudden I noticed a very faint, foul odor. And we weren't eating any food or anything. So I knew it wasn't me. So I just kind of jokingly said, you passed gas or whatever. And the young lady she was very adamant to say, no, she didn't. And I'm like, dude, there's no dog here. There's no children here. Nobody cooked. Like, it's obvious that, you passed gas. It's no biggie. Like, it's cool. You pass gas. It happens. We joke about it. We keep it moving. And she was very adamant to say no. And, that experience really taught me something. It's like sometimes people can really get caught up with the fantasy and the lie to the point where they really believe it and think it's true, even though it's obvious for everyone else. But I also realized that her really staying true to not wanting to expose herself with that vulnerability was basically a crutch. But it taught me something within myself, and I asked myself, I said, hey, do I want to be around people who aren't going to be honest with themselves, or do I really want to be around people who want to be honest with themselves? But at first it starts with me. And so I had to sever that relationship, keep it moving. But again, it taught me, like, okay, if I'm with somebody and they don't feel comfortable with expressing themselves, where it's cool, it's natural, I'm not judging you, like we all have to do it, then it's like I realized that that person was judging themselves, which is basically projecting that on me. And I don't want to be judged, right? And I think on some level we all kind of get judged, right? But my thing is, are we willing to change? Are we willing to kind of do something different from that judgment, especially when we're called out? Right. At some point, when we're called out, we have to kind of step back and take a step and look and say, well, you know what? That's correct. I think I need to work on that a little bit more and be honest with ourselves. Right. And so I'm sharing that because I realized that some of my relationships I had to sever because, they didn't appreciate the truth because unfortunately they like to live up in that lie. And so I don't judge it. I understand it. But then I have to ask myself, okay, what aspect of myself, am I telling a lie to, that I have to be honest with myself, right? And sometimes it's hidden. So we have to kind of explore deep. So anyway, I want to share this video with you guys. It's like a young lady speaking a little bit about vulnerability, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about it. And if you guys are connected with us here on Facebook or on Instagram, Twitter, feel free to reach out and kind of tell me what you think about it. Okay, so all right, let's take it away. Oh, okay, no worries. Okay, so while he's loading that up, basically, explain a time when you were vulnerable and it was a challenge for you to kind of express yourself, right? Think about that. So, has there been a time where maybe you've been a little bit vulnerable, or maybe you were uncomfortable with expressing yourself? And that's normal, right? What I notice, or what I do in my work, is try to create that type of space where people feel comfortable with expressing themselves, with being vulnerable. And sometimes you have to kind of be vulnerable first. And unfortunately, sometimes people aren't at a spot or space where they are open with themselves. But my job is to try to create that space and try to push past that uncomfortability. And I talked about this before for those individuals who kind of chimed in with me when I first started. When I first came to Washington State, I went to a place. It was called Deception Pass. And when I walked out on the bridge, I felt this. Okay, I felt this uncomfortability. But I think we have it here, so we're gonna go ahead and share with it. Oh, okay, still okay, no worries. So anyway, I felt this uncomfortability, and I was a little bit vulnerable, very vulnerable actually. And I just want to thank the individual, Connie, who was right there by my side, you know, um, and I would say she was pretty emotionally intelligent. And we were kind of standing on the bridge, and I was kind of looking, and it's like, ironically, I'm not really afraid of heights at all. But I was standing there, and it's like my legs were just shaking because I was just like, wow, this is so high. And I guess I was taken aback by like the two mountains and the beautiful water, as well as the sun was kind of cascading off of the water as we were standing there. And the whole ambiance was just like very beautiful. I would say all my senses were kind of heightened because it kind of surprised me. We walked out there and I was like, wow. Because it wasn't what I like anticipated, but it was like more, but I couldn't really put it into words. And it was almost as if like I had an out of body experience. It was such a beautiful experience, but I was very vulnerable. And I remember I was standing there on the bridge, and I kind of looked at Connie, she kind of looked at me, and I was like, man, I'm just kind of afraid. Um, and it took courage for me to even say that, right? Just being afraid, because it's like, and it was weird because it's like I've never really been afraid of heights, but it was so many different things, that my body was experiencing. Um, and I think it was my first time like coming to Washington. So just the awe of experiencing Washington, because there's a lot of beautiful things out here as far as the land and the water and the mountains and that type of thing, beautiful visuals. And I was standing there and I was like very, very vulnerable. And it was so cool because I appreciated what she said, and she basically said, Larry, um be you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortability. And I really enjoyed the way she communicated that. And I kind of take that on and move forward. But it's like being vulnerable, you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortability, because it's an aspect of yourself that you still have to work through. And the normal response is to just kind of stop and just right, like the whole image as far as me being on top of the bridge, just hold your breath type of thing. But at the end of the day, you just have to kind of breathe it out, just accept it, and just allow it to be what it is, and just kind of go with the flow. And since then, I've taken several friends to that particular bridge, to experience it. And I would say, there's still a little bit of a nervousness, but I would say each time I feel like I'm a lot stronger, um, and I'm not as vulnerable. But I just wanted to put that out there because as we tackle the vulnerability, head on, and yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it doesn't feel nice, so to speak, right? And I would say the normal response is for us to avoid it. And I share this with my clients a lot too. Like, we have to sit with it, just kind of sit with it. And even if it's like uncomfortable, you just have to sit with it, because at the end of the day, you have to go through it, because when you get through it, then you're actually a lot stronger. You get the understanding behind it. Um, but one other benefit too, facing the vulnerability, is you'll notice that you have a deeper understanding of who you are. I would also say that you're a little bit more upright, if you will, as far as your boundaries, because you've kind of faced yourself. And I want to share this because you have a lot of people that avoid it. They're out here womanizing, and this is no judgment, but this is just what it is. Womanizing. You have people out here with drugs. You have people out here with um, just so many different challenges, alcohol, things of that nature. It's because they're avoiding like dealing with the pain and the vulnerability and really facing it. And so I just want to share that because there's a time when I was there, right? We've all been there. But it's important to not stay there, to kind of work through it. And so for those people that are interested, you can always reach out to me to support you. Um, I can help you through that process. But at the same time, you have to be willing to do the work, because it's going to be a little uncomfortable, right? It's kind of like having a little wound, and someone putting a little salt on the wound. It's going to hurt a little bit. We have to nurse it a little bit, but eventually, the scab will come and eventually will heal. But we have to kind of go through that process. So I just want to kind of put that out there. Very, very important. Um, but also too, so as we kind of get to this particular part, wanted to kind of digress for a little bit, take a little bit of break. So our high school basketball will be Thursday in West Seattle at Rainier Beach, 7:30. So make sure you guys take a look at that. And also too, Seattle MLK March and Rally will be next Monday at 11 a.m. So make sure you guys take a look at that. That'll be 11 to 2, January 20th. So show some love for that. And also, we have a new show that's going to be starting just before my show. That's going to be called Thought Life, next Monday at 5 o'clock. So make sure you guys show them some love. I'm curious to see what that's going to be about. Okay, let's get back. So vulnerability. So think about a time you've been vulnerable, and like, how did you handle that? Right. I know for me, growing up with two sisters and a mom, it was very challenging for me to express myself to my siblings. One, I was the oldest, right? And so being the oldest, there's some certain expectations you have. And I was trying to figure out my own emotions, right? And so for me, it was a lot easier for me to talk to my stepdad. During that time, my real dad was kind of going through his own emotional situation or whatever. So I really couldn't talk to him. And then when I tried to talk to my mother, um, I would say it was very challenging because I felt like during that time, I can have a conversation with her now as a grown person, but I felt at that time, um, I was being judged or certain expectations or felt a little bit of ridicule or just condemnation with speaking to her. And this is no thing against her. I just think I feel like that's kind of what I was going through. And so I'm putting this out there because I think as men, it can be a challenge for us to talk to our significant others because sometimes for females, they may be a little catty or be caught up in their emotions or depending on the time of the month. They may not be at a space where they're emotionally intelligent enough to really honor our feelings. And I think society, makes it a little bit of a challenge too, because there's so much expectations for men. Recently today, I was checking out this clip and the young lady said something really profound, and I want to like pose this to my listeners too. When's the last time, even if you're female out there or male, when's the last time you reached out to your male friend and just said, "Hey bro, I'm just checking in on you"? And I think for men, we kind of do that, but as a female, if you're out there listening, you have a brother, you have a cousin, you have a male friend, just reach out and just say, "Hey, I was just thinking about you, just checking in." And if you don't have that consistent dialogue, he'll be very surprised, like, "Oh wow," because I feel like for us in the society, I feel like a lot of people reach out to the young ladies. They have children. I think they're more social. I brought Blair and Joe on here. We kind of talked about the men's and your boys' mental health as far as the stats with that. And I feel like a lot of times as men, we keep a lot of things inside. But it'd be cool just to reach out and say, "Hey, what's up? Just thinking about you." And not really hitting them up with something to do, right? Like, "Hey, I was thinking about you. Oh, by the way, can you fix this problem for me?" Right? And again, I would say most men have no problem with that. But it's cool just to look out, right? Just to say, "Hey, I just thought about you." You know what I'm saying? Just to check in, see what's up, like just on that tip. And you'll be surprised, So recently, I've been doing that a little bit more, reaching out to people, just checking in on them. I think for me, realizing, I lost a good one with my stepdad, it's like I'm trying to be more mindful of, giving people their roses while they're alive. So for those individuals chiming in, hey, I just want to say I appreciate you. Thanks again for all the support, you've given me. And I just want to say I appreciate you for that. And also too, being vulnerable takes a lot of courage, right? Because you have to kind of do some deep dives within yourself and express some things that are just not very comfortable. It's just, it's just like taking out that trash that's just been building up for a while, you know, taking off that plaque, that's been there for a minute that you haven't nursed or taken care of your teeth. And then, the dentist goes up in there and it's like, okay, we got to do some work, right? I mean, it feels like that, the jackhammer just da da da, you got to put in that work. However, it's very beneficial. And I want to really, really say that to my gentlemen out here because I feel you. I see you guys. A lot of times, we go through things and, we kind of deal with it alone. And sometimes, you could reach out to a person and, you reaching out to them could just be like the best thing because maybe they were thinking about suicide or, they weren't really connected with someone. And the very fact that you kind of reached out to them could have saved their life. And so, that's important. So just keep that in mind. And if you're feeling like, it's tough, definitely reach out to myself or, there's certain self-help hotlines you can reach out to support you as well. But let's flip it a little bit. So again, think about sometimes you've been vulnerable. I'm curious to see if people can kind of chime in. I know, I believe last week or the week before last, we had somebody from Ireland and some people from all abroad. So I'm just curious to see if people can chime in and let me know, hey, what are you doing in your situation when you're vulnerable, right? So do you write it in your journal? Do you have a friend that you can call when you're going through certain things? I know for me personally, there's certain people that I can talk to. But I would say for me, there's an internal process that I work through to kind of work through it for myself. Because I know I've learned for me, because I have such I would say, eclectic point of view from my upbringing, coming from the D in the suburbs, being all over the world. It's like, I see things from so many different lenses, that I already know. I'm like the Andre 3000, basically. Like, it's like if I say certain things, it's going to seem very odd to certain people, right? So because I know that, I have my own internal process, and I feel like everybody may have that perspective from a certain point of view, depending on, certain aspects of themselves. But there's always good, like a certain person you can talk to that doesn't judge you, that just says, hey, I got you, feel free to express yourself. And so I would encourage you to get caught up with a journal, reach out to a mental health professional, a very good friend who's not judgmental, who can support you, a good listener, right? Somebody who can listen to you and give you some pretty good support in that regard. And also too, like, practice with that, right? Practice being a little bit vulnerable. It's okay. I would say for me, I've been doing that more often. But sometimes it could be a challenge depending on the space, right? And so we want to make sure we have that space where we can actually be vulnerable. So, okay, I'm going to check and see if we're almost ready. How are we looking over there? We're good? Okay. All right, cool. We're going to go ahead and show the clip.
And for the first 4 years of my study. And it wasn't until a man looked at me one day after a book signing and said, I love what you have to say about shame. I'm curious why you didn't mention men. And I said, I don't study men. And he said, that's convenient. And I said, why? And he said, because you say to reach out, tell our story, be vulnerable. But you see those books you just signed for my wife and my 3 daughters? I said, yeah. They'd rather me die on top of my white horse than watch me fall down. When we reach out and be vulnerable, we get the shit beat out of us. And don't tell me it's from the guys and the coaches and the dads, because the women in my life are harder on me than anyone else. So I started interviewing men and asking questions. And what I learned is this: you show me a woman who can actually sit with a man in real vulnerability and fear, I'll show you a woman who's done incredible work.
All right. So yeah, I'm curious to see your thoughts on that. I mean, it's tough, right? But the question is, are you doing the work too, right? But being in a space where you have somebody who can support you when you're going through that. And it's interesting because, recently I was visited my mom and my sister for the holiday break. And I was talking to my mom, and she was just talking about, my stepdad was her best friend. And what was really cool was, every single challenge they went through together. And I asked her, I said, well, how are you guys able to make it work? And she said, you know what? He called me out on my stuff. I called him out on his stuff. We committed, we were vulnerable. We kept it 100. She expressed some very personal things that she went through, and he loved her through it. He went through some challenges, and she loved him through it. And I think, part of that, the lesson I got behind that is love, right? Like, when you really truly love yourself, you're able to be vulnerable. And because you are seeing that within yourself, you're able to appreciate somebody else, and you don't judge them because you've been in that situation, right? Right. How many people have been on the side of the road, with a flat, for sure, right? So if I see somebody on the side of the road, I'm not going to judge it. I try to help them out because I've been there, done that. And I think for me, I notice as we can relate to people on certain levels, we tend to have a little bit more vulnerability. And so I guess moving forward, the lesson I would like to give my gentlemen today, and young boys and young ladies, if you're listening, is, be a little bit more compassionate towards yourself. Be mindful of the voices that you're saying to yourself. Be mindful of the negative self-talk. Because I feel like as we are more appreciative and loving towards ourselves, we can naturally be that towards our mate, towards our friends, towards our colleagues, and just in life. And so I just want to put that out there. So, all right. So guys, so before we wrap it up, make sure you guys show a shout out to my guest coming up next, Dr. Tracy Harrell. She'll be on from 6 to 7 o'clock. Better Together and Living Powerfully. Make sure you guys show her some love. I believe she's in Ghana, but I think she might be headed back. I'm not sure. So show her some love. Make sure you guys checking in. One more thing too. High school basketball. As I said one more time, high school basketball is gonna be this Thursday. West Seattle, Rainier Beach, 7:30 p.m. Make sure you guys check that out. Also, Seattle MLK March and Rally will be next Monday at 11 o'clock, January 20th. So make sure you guys show some love for that. And then welcome to our new show next Monday, 30 minutes before me. The new show is going to be Thought Life. So make sure you guys show him some support and some love. And I'll be seeing you guys soon. So real quick, before I let you guys go, think about what are you doing to show a little bit of vulnerability. Also, too, think about how can you show a little bit more compassion towards yourself and then towards your neighbor. And I'm curious to see if you guys can chime in with us next week and let us know what are some things you notice. Would love to hear your voice. Also, too, we talked about this before. Let us know some topics that you want to talk about. Let us know some things you enjoy as far as the Men's Mental Health Show. If there's some things you want us to talk about, feel free to shout out to us and let us know. Okay, guys, without further ado, we're going to see you guys next week. Peace.